Hi, I'm Bob Trask. Today we're going to talk about our stories, our life stories. It's exciting. It's really exciting. Our life stories, the stories of our lives, everything that happened to us from birth up until now, all put together. It all creates a great group of stories. And some of those times in our past we regret, and some of them we celebrate. And those things that we regret, we tend to hide from ourselves. And when we don't tell ourselves the truth about every single thing that happened and how we experienced it, how we felt about it, even though we might think it was awful, and we may think it's past and gone and meaningless, but it's not meaningless and it's not gone. It's still there, and it'll always be there. It's sitting as a really live experience deep in your heart. And you know that because even as I'm talking about this, you're going back and looking at some of the things that were regretful or even might be, or even that you might have resented in your past. And you're looking at those right now. And the truth of it is have they been expressed? Were you allowed to express them? Was it appropriate to express them? Because if you didn't express them, then they didn't become a part of your story. They became a hidden, like a hidden urgency deep in your heart, deep in your soul. And it has a tendency to run your lives. Many of us have dark pasts, and often the purposes of those darknesses are hard to know unless we can express them. My favorite novelists write books, and in those books, in each novel, there'll be a lot of different stories. And all those stories blend together and come together to make up a final story. And those final stories, all blended together, coming together, maybe even seemingly dissimilar, but they all have meaning to each other and they all come together. And those stories are the stories that make up a novel, that make up a book, and they make up my life and they make up your life. All different stories, seemingly dissimilar, a lot of them, but they all come together and make up one thing, and that one thing is the identity of who you are and who I am. Those identities, it's not our eternal identity. Like we were alive before we were born into these bodies, and we'll be alive after we leave these bodies. But during the time that we're here, we build an identity for here. And that identity is really precious, really, really precious. Has some ups and has some downs, but it's really, really precious. And it can only be precious if you and I are willing to express and experience all of those. You see, when we came into this existence, as when we came out of the foreverness that we are into this incarnation, we came into this incarnation to grow in spirituality, to grow in consciousness, to expand in consciousness. That's what every living creature's doing. It may not seem like it to us, but every living creature, a plant, everything is growing in consciousness, growing in awareness, growing in mindfulness. Everything is growing. Everything. The smallest mote of dust is growing, is expanding, is evolving, is changing. Every single part, every single one of us. But we human beings, we have the ability to judge, to think, to think about thinking, to judge our thinking. We're different than the rest of them. We're different than all the rest of the animals, the mammals and the fish and the reptiles. We're different. We're different because we have the ability to think, to conjugate, to to imagine a thing and then to bring that thing into being. A spider creates a web. I can't create a web like that. That's magic. That's incredibly magic. But the spider does it automatically. I'd have to think about it. And when we think about it, then it becomes problematic. But see here, we're here to grow in wisdom and in joy. To grow in wisdom and to grow in joy. And joy is not happiness. Joy is a state of being that is a platform of health and wealth and goodness. And that's our goal, is to grow in joy, to build that platform stronger and stronger, and to grow in wisdom. Not smartness, not intellectual wisdom, but I'm talking about knowingness, an intuition, an intuitive knowingness that's deeper than thinking. And we only get there when we have experiences. So here's the way it works. If we experience something and we don't express it, then it's not an experience. It has to be expressed in order for it to be a full experience. It has to come in and then go, and then it has to go out. We have to breathe in, but we can't just hold our breath forever. We have to breathe back out. And when we breathe in oxygen and CO2 and nitrogen and a whole bunch of things. And when we breathe out CO2. And when we breathe in, that oxygen comes from the trees and the sea grasses and the meadows of the world and the forests of the world. And that oxygen comes into us and it makes our body strong. And then when we breathe out CO2, and that goes out to the sea grasses and to the meadows and the forests and the jungles of the world, and it gives them life. And so we're inhaling and exhaling each other constantly. And that's the way we work in this society of reality in this incarnation. But what we're supposed to be doing is experiencing, and then that experience has an impact on us, and then we express that impact. We express our experience, of that adventure. We express that. And if we don't express that, then it's meaningless. And if it's painful, if it comes to me and it's painful, it's meaningful in a way that is painful, then it goes in and it sits inside of me. And if I don't express it, it festers because it needs to be expressed. If somebody hurt your feelings, terribly hurt your feelings when you were 12 years old, if a parent died and you were not allowed to grieve properly, and then you had to shove that down inside, then it festers over the years, and it turns into all kinds of other things than just that loss of a parent, because other griefs that are like that come and join with that, and after a while there's this whole cauldron of unexpressed sorrows or regrets or resentments or experiences or hurts that just lay there. Now, when something good happens, we don't have any problem expressing that usually, but sometimes we do. Sometimes people teach us, the parents teach us, or teachers or clergy teach us that it's not okay to express your good experiences because you're bragging, you're being boastful, because you're being prideful, and pride goeth before the sin, and the way the angels got thrown out of heaven is through the sins of pride, etc., etc. But you need to be proud of who you are. I need to be proud of who I am. We need to have we need to be excited about who we are, and excited about our life stories, and excited about all of the negatives as well as the positives, because without the negatives, there are no positives. The positive feeling only feels that positive because there was a negative feeling to compare to. And our life's victories uplift us anew and give us the confidence to risk But unlike our victories, our traumas have elements of guilt, shame, and resentment, and they're mostly hidden. And we don't read those pages because they think we diminish us. And it's that hidden trauma that destroys our self-confidence and destroys our, our ability to trust and brings about self-doubt. And it keeps us from living fully. So we're taught as kids when it's okay to express and when it's not okay to express. But all experience needs to be expressed, doesn't it? And made okay. So we don't want that toxicity inside of us. We don't want that. And so when we're allowed to be angry, let's be angry. When we're allowed to be sad, let's be sad, to be happy, to laugh, to cry, to grieve, to lament, to dance, to sing. Because there's no right or wrong with emotions. The simple parts of nature, they're just simple parts of nature. But the dark and the light are also parts of nature. Now, when I say to express the negative, like some people express the negative in really violent ways. I mean, some hit and some do terrible things to other people or to the furniture or their house or their car or or somebody they don't know, or they have go around with a dark attitude, or they bark at people. And those are people who have that wellspring inside of them that's seething, that's trying to get out. And it comes out in really obnoxious ways sometimes. So we need to look at our life story, at all parts of our life story. And we need to accept those parts, all the parts. Sociologist and life coach Martha Beck tells us the important thing is to tell yourself a life story in which you, the hero, are primarily a problem solver rather than a helpless victim. This is well within your power, whatever fate might have dealt you. I want to repeat that. The important thing is to tell yourself a life story in which you, the hero, are primarily a problem solver rather than a helpless victim. This is well within your power, whatever fate might have dealt you. Now, what she's saying is that something may have happened to you. I could tell you several things that happened to me that have no. I mean, they didn't get handled. Like I got at one point betrayed, and 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 there was no way to settle that. There was no way to bring it back even. I just was settled. I was just left with my pain and there was no way to change it. I was just left with my pain. So what do I do with that? I express it. What do I express? The event. I express my feelings about the event. I express my feelings and express my feelings until they finally become a healthy part of me. It's no longer a negative. It's no longer a ripping apart. It's no longer a painful tearing back. This is what happened. And because I'm strong and because I'm who I am, I handle that and I am willing to have that darkness inside of me. I remember looking at a painting one time and I thought this woman was really famous and her painting was all pastels. Excuse me, all pastels, really pastel painting. And as I looked at that, I thought, but she needed some shadows. She needed something to give the pastels definition. And so we need the definition. We need the dark as well as the light to make the light shine brighter. And let the dark be the dark. It doesn't have to be handled. Just let it be the dark. There's darkness in the world. There are people all over the world who are being hurt, hurt badly and who have no recourse. It's not going to get handled, but it's their life story, and it can be a powerful life story. Mandela, and I've told this story so many times. Mandela, when he was leaving prison after all spending almost 30 years in prison, and almost 30 years in prison for being who he was, just for being a black man in a white society. And those 30 years he spent, when he left the prison, somebody said, "How are you going to handle the resentment of being in prison all those years?" And he said, "I had to leave that in the prison, otherwise I'd still be in prison." And he went on to become the president of his country. So we're not done, but we need to have the power that came to us from those negatives. It built a power inside of us that couldn't have been there otherwise. It built a sense of ability to forgive, ability to accept, ability to be a bigger person. We each have emotions that are as different as snowflakes, as unique as fingerprints, and each of us is separately and differently impacted by life events. And if we're free of guilt and shame, we can each feel free to express our emotions, but we do it in our own ways. Even though many of us learned not to express our own emotions honestly. But those emotions don't go away, do they? They don't diminish one bit. They're alive and they're affecting us in every way, every day, waiting for something to trigger them and bring the unresolved, unhealed feelings back to the surface. Have you ever known anyone who reacted to something in that way? It seemed way too extreme for the situation. I remember a man going into a rage because somebody suggested he was being dishonest about something he said. Turned out that as a child, he was being constantly punished for being dishonest, even though his accusations were false. The people who were accusing him were people who had no trust and no imaginations and couldn't see beyond the end of their nose, and they couldn't see the validity of what he was saying or how he was being. So as a child, he was forced to bury himself, bury his expressions, bury his shame, bury his hurt, bury his anger. And as an adult, it took very little to get that hidden volcano to erupt. The beloved author Lynn Grabhorn said this: "So rather than denying or stuffing your past, go ahead and look at it. But without judgment, look at it, express it, admit it, acknowledge it, accept it, and move on." In other words, let your past become something that's simply a matter of fact. That's all. Express your disappointment, your regret, your anger, and then let it go. If you don't, you'll continue to draw it to you and draw the events that are like that to you again and again. Those events that you're still resenting or still regretting. So you keep pulling them back to you, pulling them back to you. Through the law of attraction, you keep pulling them back to you until you express them and let them go. If someone asks you what your story is, and what they're really asking is, how do you identify yourself? Are those failings in your past still unresolved? If so, isn't it true that those failings are valid life experiences, and that they gave you the strength and the maturity to be real? Otherwise, we only bury our feelings, but we also deny our feelings and we deny ourselves. And then those feelings fester inside of us. Even the darkest and most awful experiences of the past can still change us for the better, can still change us for the better. If we will just put them into balance with the rest of our lives. If I have this terrible negative over here, and I just focus on that terrible negative, but what if I look over here at a beautiful positive, and then I look back at the negative and I say, yeah, you know what? It doesn't really matter that much because I have a beautiful life. I have a beautiful life, and that's just part of it. And is it a painful part? Yeah, and that's okay. I can handle pain. I can live with pain. As Lynn Grabhorn said, I can express it and then let it go. And so I don't continue to draw to me the very events that I'm still resenting or regretting. The hardest lesson to learn, and all too few have learned it, is that once we reach the age of freedom, which is being able to think for ourselves in a mature and accountable way, we are the sole writers of our life story. Author and TV producer Rhonda Byrne says, life isn't happening to you. Life is responding to you. Life is your call. Life, every area of your life is your call. You're the creator of your life. You're the writer of your life story. You're the director of your life movie. You decide what your life will be. You decide what your life will be. And if you decide that your life so far has been a lot of chaos, then go back and put that chaos in order. Express it and let it just be, as she said, fact. Just let it be fact and then let it go. When I was a boy, the main thrust of my Catholic education and indoctrination was admitting to be sinful, shameful, guilty. That was just part of it. I mean, just you beat your chest and you said, through my fault, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. So whenever a bad thing happened in my life, it was a result of my sinfulness. It was part of the sinfulness. It was because it came to me because I was this sinful, shameful, guilty person. When I was 7, living in a California housing project, the neighbor upstairs had a cat named Butch, and I really liked Butch. And one morning I looked out to see Butch's body crushed and bloody in the street. And the impact on me was so great, I could actually taste it. I knew I had part of that slaughter. I tasted it for years. But expressing those feelings freely was not allowed. It was not appropriate. I had to man up. A few years later, my dog Max was run over and he died in my arms. He was my best friend. He was my pal. He was my daily pal. I could taste Butch's body in the street, and now I could taste Max's as well. And I saw a great deal of death over the next years, both animals and people. And each death added to those early ones and haunted me. It was an ongoing trauma. It was like a phobia inside of me. That was my childhood experience. Writing my story then would have been a pretty awful story. But in my late 20s, I became a San Francisco ambulance attendant. And it was a job that was terrifying. When I took it, I knew I was going to be terrified because I knew I'd be facing death often. But I did it. And step by step, I expressed my feelings of those deaths with friends and in my journal. And those expressions freed my old stories and made them work and made them be okay. Were they still painful? Yes, but they were okay. Wasn't it Shakespeare that said, parting is such sweet sorrow? So there was a sweet sorrow. Now I face deaths more easily than anyone I know. I've had a wonderful life, lived in pristine wildernesses, lived under and on the sea. And I've been loved and allowed to love unconditionally. So my life story is a beautiful one, in spite of the fact that there are tons of trauma in it. And since our life stories define us, they tell us who we are. They tell us how we are and how we go forward in life, and what we can do and what we can't do. And if we have experienced and expressed all those experiences, they've all become strength and wisdom. And now we can go forward with more power and more grace than we ever had before. So let's tell our life stories to ourselves. Let's tell them all, the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's tell all of it and let it all be part of a beautiful, beautiful adventure. Author and motivational speaker, I want to finish with her today. Caroline Adams Miller. She gives us this final word. She says, your life is a sacred journey. It's about change, growth, discovery, movement, transformation, continually expanding your vision of what's possible, stretching your soul, learning to see clearly and deeply, listening to your intuition, taking courageous challenges at every step along the way. You are on the path, exactly where you're meant to be right now. And from here, you can only go forward, shaping your life into a magnificent tale of triumph, of healing, of courage, of beauty, of wisdom, of power, of dignity, and of love. Of dignity and of love. Thank you, Caroline Adams Miller. Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful word. So let's go forward this week and live a new way. Let's accept all parts of our lives. Let's go back and look at those things that we regret, that we have a little bit of resentment for, and let's put them to bed. Let's express them. Do you need to beat on a pillow with your fist? Then beat on a pillow with your fist. Do you need to cry? Do you need to cry out loud? Do you need to call someone and talk about it? Do you need to sit down and write about it? And laugh about it until you get to the place where you can laugh about it? And then you put it to bed. And it becomes just another part of your beautiful, beautiful, beautiful life that you have and you've brought forward to us. Thank you. Thank you for being with me this week. And next week, bring a friend, and I'll see you then.